if you're not making a mistake, you're not learning. But don't make the same mistake twice. And what that allowed me to do was push, learn, be creative, do my job well. And as a result of that, I was promoted almost every year I was there.
Hi, everyone. It's Dean.
And it's B. We're here to help you build your commercial real estate network so you can get your foot in the door and design the career of your dreams.
We interview leaders in commercial real estate and hear their stories of failure, triumph, basic survival, and hard-won wisdom.
It's like having coffee with the real estate pro.
You're listening to How I Got My Job. Welcome, everybody, back to How I Got My Job. It's Dean here.
And Beast as well. I'm excited for our guest today, Dean. I know you are too, because you know him really well.
I'm super fired up to have our guest on today who's got just an incredible story to tell. So I'm not going to take all the punchlines away from B. She already gives me a hard time for doing that. So I'm going to bump it back over to you, B.
Yeah, I love his story. It's so relatable to our audience. I'm excited to walk through it. Today we have Ashleigh Simpson. I don't want to drag this out anymore than we need to. Let's just get into it. We have Ashleigh Simpson. His title is Senior Vice President and Head of Structured Development Finance. Very impressive title, and we'll get into what all of that means. He works at Grosvenor. We're excited to have him here. He's been in the industry for 27 years. It's an amazing accomplishment. Ashleigh joined Grosvenor in 2022 and leads the Structured Development Finance program in North America. Ashleigh has over 27 years of experience in acquisitions, asset management, joint venture, and fundraising across multiple asset types. Currently overseeing $1.1 billion in development valued across active projects. Ashleigh has directly sourced and closed more than $8.3 billion property acquisitions, development, and core joint ventures and fundraising. Ashleigh, we're so excited to have you here today. We have so much to dig into just from that amazing description of your life, and I'm sure there's so much more to dig into. Ashleigh, welcome.
Thank you both. And after hearing all of that, I'm thinking to myself, there's still more I want to do. So it's a sort of a long intro. But thank you.
B and I were thinking, what have we done with our lives? After listening to that, it was like, oh man, I need to sharpen my game.
You want to add, I'm like, how do I take less off my plate? So it's in place. Ashleigh, your title is so impressive and you've done so much. Let's start with what you're doing today. Before we go through your life, what does it mean? What are you up to for the students who have no idea what that meant?
Well, and the bottom line is, as Dee will tell you, the bigger your title, the more responsibility you have when things go wrong. It's usually the people with the longest titles that get all the blame. But that's okay. It's something that I enjoy, something that I like. So my role here is leading a team of about 10 people between Canada and the US in sourcing new development investment opportunities. And the program, the business that I lead has been around for about 20 years, and it's one of three lines of businesses Grosvenor run here in North America. I just taken a sort of a full step back. Grosvenor is a UK-based firm. It's a fairly wealthy family. I think it goes back some 300 years. It goes back all the way to even further than that, back to the days of William the Conqueror. So there's a lineage there that has been around for some time. Their real estate holdings started off with real estate holdings in London, in Belgravia, and Mayfair. So a fairly well-heeled family that's been investing in Europe, Asia, and North America over the last, probably 100 years or so.
So, Ashleigh, would love just to kind of start from the beginning. I know that you started your life not in the U.S. as so many of our listeners have, where they were born in another country. Would love to kind of hear your story, where you grew up, and then I know that you spent some time in the military and then to college. But give us that story to kick us off here.
I appreciate that. Okay, it is something that I am grateful for. I thank my parents for being selfless in their desire to have my sister and I live a better life in the US. And my parents gave up all of their friends and family from South America, Guyana, which is actually the only English speaking country on the continent. Every other country speaks primarily Spanish or Portuguese, Dutch, and French. So those are probably English, Dutch, and French are probably the minor languages on the continent. But my parents gave up that that background, that support system, and moved to Maryland, just outside of Washington D.C. And if I were to tell people what that experience was like, it would probably be a longer conversation. But the takeaways are: certainly got teased with my accent. I certainly felt like a bit of a fish out of water in terms of just sort of cultural shock and going to school. But there was one thing my dad told me prior to coming to the U.S. My dad lived in the U.S. for some time before the rest of the family moved. He said, "Son, you can be anything you want to be in the U.S. but for president of the United States." And I was like, "Okay, well, that works for me. I'm okay with that."
Yeah.
So that was always my North Star. It was the ability to do anything. And my parents are big on education, recognizing that they did not graduate college. And, it was always school, school, school. And maybe school was, I was a dreamer and I'm still a dreamer. And, at one point in school, I didn't master the subject matter, ended up at summer school. And as my mother told me one day, she said, after that summer, you got your stuff together. It was all, on a roll after that, and you didn't look back. And I learned the lesson of, in the summer, I want to spend it with my friends, not, go back to a hot classroom and watch other people play while I'm relearning things I should have learned or paid attention to the first go around.
So, Ashley,
So
I just want to jump in here because there is an extra pressure, and I know this pressure well, so I know you can speak to it. When you have family that comes from another country, and yes, they said, okay, this is something you can come in and do whatever you want, right? I didn't have that caveat of not being able to be president because I was born here, right? So
yeah.
but what I'm saying to you is, and what I would like you to kind of communicate is talk about like that extra added pressure. You're coming from another country. Your parents left everything behind for you and your sister. Talk about that. What does that feel like? Do you understand that pressure from the beginning, or is that something that you understand later on as you get older?
That's a great question. I think the pressure that I probably felt was more around assimilation and the sort of the cultural assimilation. I grew up in a house and we moved to an apartment, and I said to my dad, I said, "What is this?" And so this is where we're living. It's an apartment building. There are other people around us on the same floor. There are people above, there are people below us. I wasn't accustomed to that. So that was something new. The pressure of, I would say, being in the classroom, and I was asked a question. I remember this vividly. I was asked a question. I stood up to answer the question, which was customary when I went to school, and everyone started laughing at me like,
Right.
"What are you doing? Why are you standing up to answer a question?" But that's how I was raised, and that's the schooling I was. It wasn't a private school; it was a public school I went to. But that's what I was taught, and so there's this cultural piece. So that's the pressure, if you will. I don't think I recognized until I was later, until I was older, the pressure that my parents were under, because they were constantly assimilating as adults and having two children and being able to provide for those children in an environment where they had a good support system in uh, extended family, but it wasn't home for them.
Ashley, that's really interesting to hear because so many people have different experiences coming over. I'm always interested too, and B talks a lot about this in her background, which was what were the expectations on graduating from high school,
Yeah.
and how were you thinking about opportunities and where you wanted to go in life? Would love to hear how that inflection point played out in your family.
And then Ashley,
Sure.
also add like, then where does real estate come into all of that, right? So yeah, just to tie it all back in.
Well, graduating high school, the expectation was that you would go on to college, and we didn't have financial means to send my parents didn't have financial means to send me off to college. I don't think I had the best grades to go on to college, so I decided to go into the Marine Corps with the expectation that I would use the GI Bill to fund my college education. And 2 years in, I started that process by taking classes virtually. And at sort of my fourth year, sort of my time as I was coming up at the end of my tour, yeah, I was at an inflection point where I basically said, oh, well, I really like this college stuff. I'm really learning stuff, but I can also stay in the Marine Corps because I really like that. I actually prayed on it. Next morning I woke up, I had clarity like no one else. And I said to my recruiter, my counselor, I said, you know what? I'm going to get out. Someone else wants to stay more than I do. And I was out of uh, the Marine Corps, I think January of that year. And I was enrolled in community college by the fall of that same year. And from there on, it was all the way through the University of Maryland. And I didn't look back.
Did you feel like you were a different person after going through the Marine Corps and then thinking about college than if you had gone straight in?
The difference was probably in my execution. It's like I made the decision and I followed through on it. I think had I gone straight to college, I may have. My parents are very much about getting the job done. I would have gotten stuff done, but I think I felt more of an adult coming out of the military than going into college.
Cultural question, right?
Yeah.
Because for me, when you talk about college, like you're like hitting it on, like there was no choice. It was like high school, college. And
Yeah.
my mother didn't know. She was just like, you're doing it. You're in America. You're an American. Figure it out, right?
Figure it out. Yeah.
So the expectation was for you to go to college. Was there a point where you basically defied your parents to go into the military? Or did they understand that decision?
That's a great question. It was I loved the Marine Corps. They were the best, and I wanted to be part of the best. And they knew that was in my heart. My dad wanted me to be a cop, and I was like, I don't want to be a cop. My dad is a police officer, retired police officer, and that's not something I wanted to do. And so the maybe that was a rebellion,
Mhm.
if you will. But they knew at the end of the day that I would be in school, and I think they were okay with the path that I took. And I would say from what they tell me, they're exceedingly proud, and I'm happy that they're proud because I tell them it's based on what you did for me and my sister, my older sister, and this is the product that you all produce. So, it's really a reflection of both of you that that is a reflection of me. But certainly, they were supportive along the way.
The reason I mentioned that, Ashley, is because I do want you to there are some things that our students are listening to this, and there's certain things that they have to do. They might have to go against their parents because they don't
Yeah.
understand real estate. So I just want to hey, we've done it. And as long as the outcome is good, no one's going to remember
Yeah.
the selling part, right? But
No.
it's hard to do it. But I wanted you to kind of talk through that a little bit because people
Yeah.
are doing it every day. And to hear a story and to hear in the end it turns out fine and no one remembers that part is important.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're going to go against your parents' wishes, you do it with conviction, but you do it with a plan.
Yeah.
And there's no substitute for a plan and conviction. It doesn't mean that you won't fail. It doesn't mean that you won't run into obstacles. And that doesn't mean you should give up, but certainly have at least some plan. And the best way to get a plan is to talk to other people. And you may not get, here is a silver bullet answer. Here is exactly what you need to do. And if you follow this plan, you're guaranteed to get this outcome. Life doesn't work that way. You have to be flexible. But at least start with here's the direction I want to go. I thought I wanted to be at the end of the day a lawyer or a politician, I'm glad that I'm neither one. I work with enough lawyers, I know enough politicians, and I'm okay with where I am as an individual in my career. But everyone's yoked differently, and I think what helped me was at least having a plan. I knew I wanted to get to college. I started the process in the Marine Corps. And once I got a taste of it, I said, you know what? I need to continue this because it's feeding a desire of mine to learn and do more. That's what was that's still at my core, a desire to learn and do more. And
And Ashley, I was just going to step in because I I would love to hear, because I know a lot of people have contemplated military service, have been in the military. What would you say are the top two things you learned? I mean, that's a significant. It's a significant job. It's a significant
yeah,
sacrifice. It's a significant thing being on the front lines for our country, and we're indebted to those who do it. But
yeah,
I feel like people come away with different lessons learned, and would love to hear what you took from that experience.
that's a great question. But I think one of the things I learned is how to deal with people from different socioeconomic backgrounds. That's one of the biggest things I learned. Not the biggest, but one of the biggest things I learned. And the it becomes, the military is a microcosm of the broader population. So you get everything that you would experience, everything that makes up the U.S. You would get everything in this sort of small, intense population of military individuals. I think I bring that today with me in dealing with individuals, and that I it's rare for me to not be able to work with someone, like rare. That is a measure of, maybe there are things that I can never get past with that person. It's usually, ethical issues or something like that, and that's exceedingly rare, from my experience. At one point, I started running out of money, so I said I needed a job, and there was a job posting for administrative assistant for Jones Lang LaSalle, and I got the job thinking I was going to work for a law firm. I had nothing. I had Jones Lang LaSalle. It was like three different. To me, it was partners Jones, Lang, and LaSalle. It's three different people. So clearly, law firms are always made up of, at least three principals or some partners or something like that. So I show up, and they're like, "Oh, here's your desk," and you'll answer the phone, and you'll take service calls from tenants that are either too hot, too cold, need toilet paper in the bathroom. Someone didn't clean the trash up, in the elevator lobby. The trash didn't get picked up. The dumpster isn't put in the right place when the dump truck topped it off. Things of that nature. And I had no idea this was all part of commercial real estate, but those were the nuts and bolts that makes a property. No matter if you're an office building, a hotel, a retail building, a multifamily building, all those assets have the same functional things that happen.
There's a huge
Yeah.
lesson in there that I don't know if you recognize it, but I need to pull it out. I have to.
Yeah, yeah.
The lesson there for me is you have this huge title right now, but you started
Mhm.
off as an administrative assistant.
Yeah.
And that to me is like, first of all, you didn't know you were working at a legal firm. That's what you thought you were going into. So you
Yeah.
fell into commercial real estate, as did
I
I.
do it.
But once you got there, you figured things out. But then you didn't start as a manager. You didn't have this
No.
ego like, well, I have my degree or I have this much years in the military. I need to, you just needed money, like that bare
Yeah.
minimum. And you said this legal firm looks amazing. Awesome. Right. So I
Yeah.
just want to point that out to students. Like when you're starting your career, you might leave with a degree. And again, I'm not trying to sell our platform here, but this is why you need like, people who know people. This is where the networking comes in because Ashley didn't have a network. So he's like, I just need to make.
No.
So Ashley, can you just dig into that a little bit? Just because
Sure.
this is an important lesson, in my opinion.
I haven't thought about that in a while, and thanks for the reminder. I would say that once I once I sort of settled into it, maybe 2 years into it, I decided I wanted to put my best foot forward in no matter what I did. And there were two things. There was certainly that piece, but add that to mentorship I received at my uh, employers at the time. Those two things helped me excel very quickly. And it's rare to move through commercial real estate today from how I started. The expectation today is that you'll come in with a degree and from there you'll start. But one thing has not changed. Real estate is experiential, meaning that the more experience you get, the more the more responsibility will be given to you. Unlike technology jobs where folks can, they can have an undergrad degree and they are the chief investment officer for that particular platform, making $1 million a year or whatever it might be. That's a different set of skills that technology is a different set of skills that are used relative to real estate. Real estate it's tangible assets, things you can touch and see. It is other people's money, and they want their money back, and the profit you promised them at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And if you screw that up, they are more likely to tell the next person, their friend, and their friend's friends, and their friends, that you took 20, 40, $90 million of their capital and you returned 70 million. Now, there's reasons why that may happen. That's okay. But if you have a track record of losing people's capital, you're unlikely to be successful in real estate.
Ashleigh, it would be great to hear, because you've told us how you got in the door at real estate, right? Which is a big piece. And I think B spoke to that very well, which is, you want to be able to start somewhere, and getting your foot in the door, no matter where it is really a really tough thing to do, but it really opens up a lot. How did you, and maybe if you can talk about your trajectory, because you're talking about a lot of the skills that made that happen, but maybe if you can talk more specifically about your directory coming out of college and moving up the ranks from JLL into the larger real estate world.
Yeah. Thanks for that question. As I think about it, I still go back to mentors, and there were two instances where I could think of that I know were accelerants for me to excel. The first had to do when I left Jones Lang LaSalle. I joined the JBG companies. It's now JBG something today, and the portfolio manager at the time, a gentleman by the name of Rod Lawrence, he's the one that said to me, if you're not making a mistake, you're not learning, but don't make the same mistake twice. And what that allowed me to do was push, learn, be creative, do my job well. And as a result of that, I was promoted almost every year I was there, to the point where when I left, I had a team of 13 people and a portfolio, a million square foot portfolio. That was huge because my peers were individuals that were 20 years in the business, maybe a little more. And I felt a little out of place at times, but I knew that people trusted in what I was doing, and what I didn't know, I would I'd be able to learn, and how to resource to rely on. So a resource to rely on to learn is important. And then when I joined Grosvenor in 2007, I believe it were, I remember the interview process. And the interview process was with a gentleman by the name of John Flavin. And he worked at car companies. It's an old company that's no longer around per se. And he was a developer, tall, baritone, individual from Harvard. So to me, quite intimidating, not having gone and he was also an Air Force veteran. And I remember the interview process. And one of the things I know I did is I made sure I researched Grosvenor. One, two, I tried to figure out who I was interviewing with. Two, and the third thing I did, which at one point everyone laughed and said, I followed up. I mean, I followed up. It wasn't rude or anything like that. I followed up. I followed up with, is there anything else I can answer? Or, because when people say, oh, if you have any questions after the interview, so please, and it's almost sometimes perfunctory. It's almost like a throwaway statement. No, I followed up, and when I got the job, I was told you were the only one that really kind of followed up, and you followed up aggressively, and I kind of liked you for that. And I was like, oh, okay, but it showed me that if with manners, if I followed through and was thoughtful in my follow up, that people would actually remember what this guy, because I'm sure I was competing with other very experienced individuals. And John mentioned to me at one point we were going to lunch after I was hired, maybe a year or two later. After I was hired as an analyst, and I now moved into from property management. I moved over to basically investment management, which is very different skill set. I had to learn, how to do pivot tables and discounted cash flows, and by the way, I had to figure that stuff out on my own. But I did have help to try to figure that out. We were walking past the White House going to lunch, and I forgot how the conversation started, but one of the things he said to me was, he said, Ashleigh, you have a proclivity for analysis. Now, proclivity and definitions are, I didn't know what proclivity meant, and I just said, yeah. So, of course, I went back and tried to look up, I spelled proclivity, looked it up, and it was like, oh, that was a compliment. And to me, as someone that in high school, I wasn't very good at math, or at least I didn't think I was, or even college, I said, he thinks I have a proclivity for analysis. Like, is he talking about me? But it was a value that he saw that I didn't see in myself. And so it was a reflection of how other people saw me prior, even when I was in the military, that I didn't know that I had. And even today, people say, well, you're really good at it. I'm really good at that, whatever it might be. I don't know, me? Yeah. So titles, even though I have a big title, there are still moments when you have self-doubt. I don't care, where you are, there's still moments you have self-doubt. So that was another individual or moment, someone that influenced my career, and he opened so many doors for me in terms of understanding, John did, in terms of understanding investment management. And I went and I earned my CCIM that helped reinforce a lot of my skill sets. And I had friends that were either analysts at brokerage firms or VPs at other firms that would do financial analysis. And we would literally just get together and do boot camp for Ashleigh. And that's how I learned. It was a lot of, okay, I need to figure this out on my own. And mind you, it was stressful. And so anyone that's coming into the business that thinks that what we do is mystifying, it really isn't. It's just a matter of what I mentioned earlier, experience. It's all experiential. After a while, you figure it out. And one of the other things I learned in my 20 some odd years in this business, no one, I don't care how much experience you've had, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, 40 years, no one has done absolutely everything. No one. Because everyone has different experience on different investments, and they may understand the risk, but they may not always understand how to underwrite it, how to put it in financial analysis terms. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that the person isn't smart. It just means that that's just something we've had to come across. And so if you're willing to be flexible with your learning, real estate is a good place where, you can always say, you know what, I've never done that. How do I do that?
Right.
Somebody has, maybe not someone in your office, but somebody has. And if no one has, then we'll figure it out.
And Ashleigh, we can talk about this stuff all day, because I relate to you so much. Whenever I think of real estate, I'm like, it's not like a doctor where you need to go into schooling, and because none of this stuff you learn in school, right? It's stuff that you come on the job, but you have to be willing to stretch yourself.
Yes,
And if
yes.
you're willing to do that, you can do anything. That's how I think of real estate, which is why I love being able to show people what others do in real estate and really give people an opportunity to see the different careers, because there's so many careers that work for everyone. And even if, like
Mhm.
you mentioned several times, you weren't the best student, but look at you, you're like thriving. So wanted to throw that out there. But one of the major things that you kind of mentioned when you were telling your story, you made a comment and you said, I felt a little out of place. I think it
Yeah.
would behoove us to jump into that, because there are times where I feel a little bit out of place and you just need to push through that. And I will say, being the woman, being a Black woman, that happens
Yeah.
a lot. Sometimes I am a double only for those who don't know, only
Yeah.
woman, only person of color, Black person in the
Yeah.
room. So I wanted to just dig into that because, again, a lot of the students are going to have to deal with it. As much as we're trying to push and change the face of commercial real estate, there are still rooms that are not diverse.
No, it's something that was I would say 20 years ago was very, very, very cute. Um, I would be in the room and be the only. And look, I think there the manifestation of uh, well, let me put it another way. When you're in the room, if you are the only, that's okay,
Mhm.
right? Because your value is a function of who you are as an individual and also what you could bring to the table. And also remember there are people that put you in that room that may not be of your melanin or a color. And that's okay. Why is that okay? Because they're looking at you beyond your skin color.
Mhm.
So if you're in that room, whether you're the only one or you're with your coworkers, whomever, or someone that you report to, they want you in that room, and they recognize that yes, that may exist, but that's not all of your value. There's more to it. And I remember my experience with that was at a negotiation table in Chicago on North Michigan Avenue, and John, the gentleman that said I had a proclivity for analysis, said to me, we were opposite the seller and the negotiation table, and we were working through a particular document. And John looks at me and says, "Ashley, do you have anything to add on this?" And he has a very deep voice, and I'm going, "Me?" In a biggish way, like I'm thinking to myself, and in my own little sort of kid voice, like, he just asked me on this. I don't know how big this is, a $20 million transaction. It wasn't very large. He wants my opinion on this, and I'm like, I haven't been working in this business, 10 years. He wants my opinion, but he valued my thought. And so for me, I do that to other people now, especially when they're doing the business, because what it did for me was it allowed me to go, okay, I have to be present in the room. I have to understand what's going on. Even if I don't, one of my admonitions to people is always ask questions, even if it makes other people uncomfortable. And you can do it both in that situation or wait until after. So learn. Two, when someone asks you if you have a question, it's okay to say not at this time. It's okay to say yes, I do, or wait. Here's what I'm thinking. It's okay to do that. Um, and then the last thing I'll say is that when someone asks me, do I have a comment? Yeah, I would typically, if I have nothing to say, I'll typically say something like, "Well, if I understand X correctly, this is what we want to do," and just restate it in your own words, and let's see if people, you know, see that you understand, or if they don't, they'll calibrate you. They'll say, "No, no, 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 that's 90% right, but here's where then," and then you learn something from that. So all I'll say is that if you're in a situation where you feel uncomfortable, it's okay. but don't carry it as as a negative, because there are people that put you in that room that trust and value you, and your value isn't a function of you being the only person in the room. It's just a competition of where we are now. Doesn't mean that you won't experience certain things that people will sort of come up with. For women at times it's sort of are you sure they'll put your hair that way? Like why are you wearing your hair in braids or something like that? Or so you want to be able to show up as your whole self, and should continue to show up as your whole self. Doesn't mean you shouldn't have manners. That's a whole different conversation. But you show up as your whole self in a business setting, and you conduct yourself in a business setting. That's different than casual setting. You should be prepared for that. But it's okay to be the only. Represent yourself well, represent your firm well, and if there are issues that come up, address it either sidebar or bring it up with someone that you trust that you can address that issue with, and have someone to help you to address that issue. I've had situations where things were said, and this is purely wrong. Things were said about me. I was in the room, and it really didn't. Maybe I was so accustomed to it, it just went in one ear and went out the other. And after the meeting, someone would go, "Wait, did you not hear what they said?" And I'm like, "Oh, I wasn't paying attention." They're like, and so they would correct the individual that made the offense or the offensive remark or offensive whatever it might be, and I would go, "Oh, okay." I mean, I've had people say, "How did you get that job?" It's just kind of like, "How did you get that job?" It's kind of like, I did like everybody else. I don't think there was no quota that Ashleigh had to be the only black guy. Let's get Ashleigh. It's sort of at the end of the day, you have to do the work. And yes, you may be the only, but know that if you're the only, it's because you're valued. And people want you there. And so take your own value, combine, and do your best. And if you have challenges, ask about it. Yeah, ask for help.
Yeah. Ashleigh, I think those are such important things to hear. And I think what's so great about hearing you on this podcast is you're so comfortable and confident in your, in everything that you speak about in your own skin. You're able to, what we talk about is being your authentic self. You're able to show some humility. You're able to demonstrate competence, all these things. One of the things that Bia and I have seen in our interns is it can be really challenging if you're a first gen and you're young to feel like you can make a mistake. Right.
Yeah.
I think you feel like, you're on your own here, and you don't feel like, a lot of the things that you talk about, which is, hey, it's okay to make a mistake. That's how you learn. You just don't want to make it twice. And you can ask questions. You can admit that you don't know the answers to things. I think folks feel like they need to have the answers to everything. And we see it with folks that have sort of grown up in the industry and maybe have parents in real estate. They can be much more comfortable because they've been in the setting and they feel like they know what the world is. And so would love to sort of hear what you would say to the interns that we see across the industry and the coffee connectees that we see that are trying to figure out that balance as they're addressing
Great question. And I see it as a hiring manager. I've experienced it. And what I would tell each individual is two things. First, when you are in that environment, when you start off either as an employee or an intern, and someone says to you, if you don't understand, ask. They really mean it because they know that you don't know everything. They really, 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 really 100% mean it. Ask. Two, if you make a mistake, it's okay to be scared, but own it. And own it in a way, say, you know what? I didn't realize that happened. I need to fix that. I want to fix it. I made a mistake. What does that do? So on the second part, what does it do? It basically shows that you are okay being accountable for what you did. And it shows that you have integrity. And if someone can't trust you to say that you made a mistake, they're not going to trust you when it comes time to leave you alone and they have to go somewhere else and do something. They can't trust you to do work independently. And that really matters. And I try to tell people, think of it this way. If you give me work product that's incorrect and I check it and I give it back to you and you fix it and you send it back to me and I think it's all okay. And I go tell it to my boss and my boss, she says, okay, this looks fine. Or, she's assuming that I checked it. Fine. She goes to talk to her boss. Her boss says, okay, this is fine too. And then her boss says, wait a minute, why is this? And they're sort of going through it. And now all the way where it started from here to where, let's say the CEO sees the numbers, it was supposed to be checked, but we relied on you. And you knew you may have known there was a mistake in there. You just never said anything. Now, guess what happens? Now I get, called in on the mat, fix it. Some people will say, you know what, that's on me. I should have checked it. Some people may not. But assuming that they do say it's on me, they're not going to throw you under the bus. But now you have created a situation where you're going to be now micromanaged in terms of your work product. And that puts stress on you. You go home to your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your partner, whomever, and you say your boss is being mean to you because every time I do anything, they want to stand over my shoulder and I'm feeling stressed and that's not how I work. And I really hate that place and blah, blah, blah. But had you said, hey, I made a mistake, you're more likely to be given a pass on something so people can learn, people can teach you so you can learn how to do things and deliver things in a meaningful way. So I would say, if someone tells you, if you don't understand, ask me. If you make a mistake, own it. And it's okay to be scared that you made a mistake. It's that, even at my level, I screw up. I tell people I screw up all the time. I probably shouldn't say that, but I screw up. I get emails from my boss going,
I do too.
no, don't do that. The CEO wanted to do that. And I'm like, sure, right? It's like, don't do that. Or you know what? Next time you want to do something like that, ask me first. I get emails like that from my boss. Yeah. And so he's at a different level. He's at the C-suite level. I'm just one below. But imagine, if a C-suite person tells an analyst the same thing, it's sort of the same reaction that you kind of get. It's like, you never want to disappoint your boss.
But Ashleigh, I think to cap that, right, I think it goes back to what you originally said, which is you make a mistake, but you don't make it again, right?
Yes.
So you only have so many times. So yes, the mistake is okay. You own it, but you must learn from it. And I really want to hone on this because it's important. You learn from it. You don't do it again. You can make another mistake on another thing, but let's not keep making the same mistakes. I just want to make sure it's very clear. We're not just out here making mistakes.
No.
Okay. Go ahead, Ashleigh.
I think the last thing I'll say on that is, as a professional, one of the things I've learned, and I try to tell people now today, is that you will have bad performance reviews. You'll have years where you didn't do things well. I've had that. I actually talked to the global head of my last company, and he said, yeah, I used to get those. I'm like, but you're running like this, $100 billion. He said, actually, I've gotten those. Like, it happens. And the takeaway there is humanity. We all make mistakes. We all have bad periods. We all have, no one, regardless of where they are in pecking order, no matter what they do, we all have had off years that made pretty bad mistakes. I could tell you of more than I've done, but the overall focus of your work should always be excellence. The overall focus of your work should always be good. People can rely on, and that is part of one of the things we talked about earlier. Is your brand.
Maybe if I can get you to hone in, so you've given a lot of different guidance. If we were to go back in time to when you did your first job at JLL and you had to give yourself one piece of advice from everything that you've learned, what would it be out of all of those things?
And other than you researching the company before going and no understanding it wasn't a legal firm. Other than that.
Well, that's a great question. The one thing I would tell myself, I would probably tell myself I am better than I think. And the reason I say it's not bravado, it's not hubris. It is really out of, by way of example, I mentioned early on that I don't think I was very good at math. I am very good at math. I can critical think. I can see things sort of dimensionally and figure it out. But from my sort of school training, that was never really pulled out of me. And so real estate actually helped me think dimensionally, like how are all things interconnected? And I can see that with math and how things work. It's kind of crazy, but not everyone thinks that way. And that for me was my Achilles heel, if you will. Like I always felt when I was in the room, like, why wasn't I thinking as quickly and as sharply as everyone else? 12 plus 12 and 12 times 12. And it wasn't that I couldn't do that with freeze, but I knew the answer. And so I was better than I thought, but it just took time for me to realize that. So I would tell my younger self, it's okay. You're actually as better than you are giving yourself credit for. I think that is where I am today, is that understanding that, but certainly I would tell my younger self that I'm better. So the negative self-talk isn't helpful. Maybe that's the best way to say it.
This has been amazing. We've learned so much. You're going to connect with so many people, just by virtue of your story, because they are going to have kind of the same story, which is why we wanted to talk to you, Ashleigh. So thank you for making this happen. We appreciate
Thank you very much.
And Ashleigh is someone who is a connector. So if you're a part of the Coffee Connector program, again, reaching out to us, this is someone that you can actually speak with. This is not just like, I heard him on a podcast, he's great. And that's like, you can actually get in contact with Ashleigh coming through us. So please become a Coffee Connector. You heard how important mentorship is. You heard how important networking is. And that's what we're here to help facilitate. Dean?
I just wanted to say thank you, Ashleigh. You brought a lot of wisdom to this podcast and a lot of things that I'm going to go back and think about. And I think that's one of the things that's interesting about the podcast. It is set up for first gens, but really it's for everyone that is a professional and trying to figure out their professional careers, and just understanding how to think about that, how to, as you put it, sort of share that humanity is really important. And I really appreciate your honesty, your candor, your wisdom, and thank you so much.
Thank you both. And Dean, I know we talked about this a few years back when it was in its infancy, and here we are. And I'm glad I was able to participate. And the last thing I'll say is that this is a good feedback loop for me as well, because questions that I get asked by folks that are now looking at getting into the industry, or even folks that maybe experience helps me learn. So this is a good feedback loop for me, and that I capture that and go, maybe that's another thing I should think about and how I'm dealing with it. So I should think about particular investment or why are we doing certain things. So thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to How I Got My Job, a podcast from Coffee Connectors.
Coffee Connectors helps connect first-gen college students with a whole new level of opportunity in commercial real estate.
To learn more, visit coffeeconnectors.com.
We would love to connect with you.